Welcome to our AAC presentation, focusing on augmentative alternative communication for the adult population. Your presenters for today include myself, Ann Kohlmeyer, Joy Hoffman, and Krista Kramer. I am Ann Kohlmeyer, and am a speech-language pathologist for the St. Luke's Health System. I have worked in that role for 20 years and hold the role of Clinical Program Coordinator for Assistive Technology. In this role, I've evaluated and treated adults with neurological disorders needing AAC for communication purposes, as well as helped other SLPs in inpatient and outpatient settings troubleshoot communication issues for patients.
And I am Joy Hoffman. I am also a speech-language pathologist and currently work as a Director of Therapy Operations for Encompass Health through a joint venture partnership with St. Alphonsus Regional Rehabilitation Hospital in Boise. I have been an SLP for about 16 years, where I have worked in a variety of settings to include outpatient, inpatient, acute care, skilled nursing, assisted living, home health, and schools, all with patients ranging from 6 months to 100 plus. When people ask if I enjoy working with kids or adults more, my answer is always adults. With kids, you are teaching them a skill they don't know they need, but with adults, you are often teaching them a skill they have lost, and when given the ability to regain that skill is a priceless gift. I'm excited to be here today and share information on how you can also be a difference maker through the gift that AAC provides.
I'm Krista Kramer, and I'm an assistive technology professional working for the Idaho AT Project. I come to this conversation about communication access from a background of working with people who are deaf, hard of hearing, and or blind, and 24 years of working for Disability Action Center, focusing on keeping people living as independently as possible when disability happens. I currently coordinate Idaho's I Can Connect program, which provides distance communication technology for people who are deafblind, and I've been coordinating programs focusing on communication access in long-term care and medical facilities since the onset of COVID-19. So I spend a lot of my time teaching people to use the accessibility features on smartphones and tablets, which I refer to as the Swiss Army knife of assistive technology.
So today, we hope to give you an overview of augmentative alternative communication and the types of assistive technology that support communication. We want you to come away from today's presentation with good foundational knowledge of AAC and how it might help someone you work with or know. As a communication partner to a person with complex communication issues, there are things you can do and should do that will improve the communication dialogue between you. We have a variety of equipment focused on low-tech options that we hope you will be able to acquire and then implement easily. Today's presentation will focus on low-tech AAC that can be used in activities of daily living, because as professionals working with persons who demonstrate communication difficulties, we know that that is often the most crucial need. If you work in an assisted living facility or skilled nursing, someone significant to you probably has communication issues. You may even know someone, a family member, that has communication issues. And you might notice that that adult is withdrawing and communicating less, often because communication is harder and harder. When it takes more effort than motivation, then communication will break down. We hope today you will leave with a few strategies or tools to turn that around. We believe that all people have a basic right to communicate. And it's not just us, but ASHA and the federal government. The National Joint Committee has outlined these Communication Bill of Rights, published as insurance that we recognize them. The American Disabilities Act, or known as ADA, is legislation passed in 1990 that I'm sure all of you are aware of, if not run into daily. Public living and work settings are required to abide by regulations to provide auxiliary aids and services to make sure that individuals with speech, hearing, and vision disabilities can understand what is said or written and can communicate effectively. The goal is to ensure that communication with people with disabilities is as effective as communication with people without disabilities. So what is communication? Communication is a successful sharing of information, ideas, feelings, or thoughts with others. It takes different forms, such as verbally communicating, as well as writing. Communicating occurs in one-to-one situations in person, on the telephone or tablet, with a video communication app, as well as in group settings. What's important to remember is that it isn't always verbal. We communicate in a variety of different forms, just like these that are written on the slide. In 2014, Bob Williams, a prominent AAC user and professional, was quoted as saying, "The silence of speechlessness is never golden." We all need to communicate and connect with each other, not just in one way, but in as many ways as possible. It is a basic human need, a basic human right. And more than this, it is basic human power. In this quote, Bob Williams clearly articulates the singular importance of communication. Without access to effective communication, individuals with complex communication needs are consigned to live their lives with minimal means to express functional needs and wants, but more importantly, social closeness to others. Exchanging information and thoughts, ideas, and feelings is limited. The very things that make us human. Augmentative and Alternative Communication, otherwise known as AAC, is an area of clinical practice that supplements or compensates for impairments in speech-language production and/or comprehension, including spoken and written modes of communication. AAC falls under the broader umbrella of assistive technology, or the use of any equipment, tool, or strategy to improve functional daily living in individuals with disabilities or limitations. AAC is augmentative when used to supplement existing speech, alternative when used in place of speech that is absent or non-functional, or temporary as when used by patients post-operatively in intensive care. One of the most difficult and emotional challenges for someone who experiences a traumatic brain injury, stroke, or a neurological disorder is temporarily or permanently losing the ability to speak. For adults who have suffered a stroke, a traumatic brain injury, or have been diagnosed with conditions such as ALS, AAC is a lifeline. It empowers individuals to actively engage in social and family activities and voice their opinion on legal and medical matters. A study in the journal of General Internal Medicine, published in August 2018, reported that adults with communication disorders, which make up roughly 10% of the population, more frequently had greater chronic conditions than adults without communication disorders. Those adults with communication disorders reported more frequently utilizing healthcare. However, those persons with communication disorders reported roughly 80% greater difficulty accessing care than those without communication disorders, often delaying or forgoing care. How does this information compare with your own experiences? Given the rising rates of disability and the aging population, the article went on to suggest that the proportion of persons with communication disorders in the population is likely to increase. Barriers to communication are complicated. It's hard enough to get the idea of what's in your head to another person when you can use clear words and see each other's facial expressions and hear tone of voice and emphasis and all those other nonverbal cues that carry meaning. There can be multiple layers of communication barriers for each unique individual. Hearing the words, seeing the expressions, or reading printed documents, or speaking in a way that others might misinterpret or not understand at all. We also need to consider cognitive issues, language comprehension, literacy levels, and the costs of any AAC needed and the time it takes to learn and use it. In this PowerPoint presentation is a document called Communication Profile. There are many versions of communication assessments that are available on the market. This is one that was originally designed as an emergency communication document during COVID, when people with communication disabilities were experiencing abrupt changes in care providers and needed ways to share their communication needs. This profile can be used for yourself or for someone else to record communication information as well as health information for a particular person. Please take time to download it and look through it, as you can find appropriate information that may help improve the healthcare and communication of your particular adult. Adults with communication disorders have either grown up with a communication disorder or acquire it due to a traumatic accident or a diagnosis of neurogenic disorder. Those who come into it suddenly often struggle with acceptance of self and communication tools, as well as the change in behavior of communication partners. It is often a difficult transition, as they don't want to appear different and want to handle it, because as adults who have been successful in their lives, and especially with communication, this change is debilitating. Therefore, it is important to take a multimodal approach, and one that includes the adult in the process, much more so than you would include a child. Neurological disorders are often degenerative, and communication disabilities will get worse. Adults where AAC intervention is essential to improving quality of life come into their roles with a variety of backgrounds and motivations. Thiessen, Horn, Buchelman, and Wallace, in Learning Motivation of Adults Involved in AAC Intervention, identified AAC facilitators as 96% family members. Training these facilitators are important to the successful implementation and use of AAC systems. A review of 31 different studies document the importance of training and summarize the effects of training, provided little about the type of instruction and learning styles preferred by adult learners. The three most relevant components identified by Malcolm, Knowles, and colleagues on AAC users and facilitators for learning preferences included need to know, prior experience, and motivation to learn. These areas could be summarized into the following points. 1, does it add value to my life? 2, instruction must value prior experience. And 3, they need to be successful. In the school setting, assistive technology is evaluated yearly as part of the IEP process. The SET framework, developed by Joy Zabala in 2005, is one of the most common methods of evaluating assistive technology needs. The premise of this framework, I think, fits nicely with the adult population as well. The premise being that you looked at the person, the environment, and the tasks required to be an active learner in the environment before you identify tools that enable the person to actively engage in the tasks of the environment. A critical feature of successfully applying the SET framework is building a shared understanding of those people working with or for the individual who needs assistive technology. So in our case, knowing the who, or characteristics of the adult, the where, environment they are living in, and the what they want to be able to do or need to be able to do. Some of the important aspects of this framework is that it focuses on asset-based rather than deficit-based. Consider the adult strengths that can be built upon, not the challenges and struggles. It also stressed collaboration of family members. You must get along with other team members or care providers. This is especially true when integrating medical and rehab providers as well as family members. So in this slide, what we'd like you to do is partner with another person and pause the PowerPoint presentation. Ask the person that you're working with or beside to pick a topic of conversation. It can be any topic, but the more complicated, the better. For instance, like a vacation that you took in previous decade, or a family member you haven't seen for a long time, or an activity that maybe you want to learn to do but aren't doing yet. And then that person has to figure out what your topic is. So they can only ask you yes or no questions in order to figure out what your topic is. So you've completed the activity. How many questions did you have to ask to figure out the topic? Typically, we see communication partners interacting with complex communicators by asking yes/no questions because they think it's easier. After all, the complex communicator only needs to say yes or no. But yes/no questions are not created equal. The range in complexity from do you want coffee or do you want to see a movie on Thursday night is significant. Some yes/no questions sound like choices, but there is no choice. So evaluate the type of questions you use with a complex communicator and see if you're opening the line of communication or possibly making it a lot more stressful, especially for the person that's nonverbal or has communication issues. Every day, we use multiple tools in order to communicate. Our AAC users are no different. We use tools like texting and email and our verbal communication, just to name a few. Unaided communication often refers to our voice, our body language, our gestures and sign language. Aided communication refers to tools we carry for that communication. An iPad, a symbol book. So we have defined AAC systems, besides being low-tech and high-tech, by also whether or not we have to carry them or we don't. Aided being anything we have to carry, unaided being anything that's already on our body and used to help us communicate. For our AAC users, aided communication involves letter boards, e-tram boards, eye gaze boards, and tactile symbols, whereas for us, it's laptops or phones or paper and pencil. We also might use a high-tech communication system as an AAC user for an aided communication system. Partner-assisted scanning requires a communication partner, but it is easiest to implement, especially on the fly or without additional materials. Tablets with communication apps give voice to thoughts and ideas. Any high-tech system provides more robust vocabulary and allows for more communication. What does low-tech AAC look like? It might look like a voice output button, letter or symbol boards, tactile symbols, sign language, or a communication book. All of these are pictures on your screen of different low-tech options. Using a low-tech AAC builds both receptive and expressive language, and it never quits or runs out of power. There are a variety of options for low-tech that can either be made in your own home or clinic or purchased from different manufacturers. They all serve the purpose of providing visual language and a way to communicate. High-tech AAC is not just an iPad with a communication app. There are many devices available on the market that give AAC users a voice with robust vocabulary. High-tech AAC offers a variety of vocabulary and features at the touch of a finger or a toe, or by using switches or eye gaze. Most people desire high tech to give a wider range of vocabulary as well as voice. In order to acquire a speech-generating device, however, a speech-language pathologist, preferably one with AAC experience, needs to be involved in the process. Insurance requires sign-off by not only your primary care doc, but the SLP who does the evaluation and helps you trial and fit a speech-generating device to your communication needs. Insurance is more lenient with adults, especially those with diagnosed ALS, in that trials with multiple devices in their homes is often waived. No matter when the high-tech system is introduced, a person should always have access to low-tech as well. Best practice when using high-tech AAC is to always have a low-tech backup. As a reminder, any high-tech system should be dedicated to communication and not used to play games or participate in leisure activities such as watching YouTube or movies. Each device should be dedicated to one person. We do not share our voices, nor should AAC users have to share theirs. Because high-tech is typically very costly and can run $10,000 to $40,000, it must be evaluated properly and with the help of not only a speech-language pathologist, but other team members. Any speech-generating device or voice output system which requires alternative access, that might be eye gaze or switches, needs to be evaluated with the help of a speech-language pathologist. This equipment is classified as durable medical equipment and requires a primary care doc to sign off on it. Insurance also has a stipulation that if the person is in a hospital or skilled nursing facility, then this equipment is not covered through insurance. We want you to know this about the equipment before you start this pathway. Know that AAC is always available in low-tech form. So let's look at the pros and cons of low-tech AAC. The pros are that it's reproducible. So we can make several boards, usually printing them on a computer with a printer, even 3D making them easy to standardize across a facility. They won't have voice output, and they won't have a robust vocabulary. Those would be the cons. And sometimes it's time-consuming to get them all made. An alphabet board, though, would allow you to spell anything. But not everyone can spell. It is easily accessible and often provides a modality of touch as well as vision. For high-tech, we know that there's a wide variety of options available, especially with the universal explosion of technology. A high-tech system is often called a speech-generating device, typically by insurance companies. Speech-generating devices are dedicated to communication, including features of voice output, robust vocabulary, ability to add vocabulary and pictures on the fly as well as text, or connect to phones or internet and perform environmental controls. The downside is that they are more expensive and complicated to operate and not all insurance companies will fund them. Sometimes older adults do not have the patience or the cognitive abilities to learn them. So keeping that in mind, sometimes low tech is the better way to go. ASHA advocates when considering AAC, parents and professionals must remember that there are no prerequisites to AAC use. That is, all individuals, no matter what the disability, should have access to AAC systems or devices that promote effective communication. This information can be found in more detail on the ASHA website. Typically, an AAC evaluation is a bit different than a traditional speech and language evaluation. The majority of this evaluation utilizes objective measures, observations, and anecdotal information as compared to standardized measures used in a speech and language evaluation. For example, objective measures might include the AAC Genie, the AAC profile, or the communication matrix. I might be able to administer the standardized measure of the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test or the Receptive One-Word Vocabulary Test. But given motor or visual impairments, I often cannot administer those. The SOP leads an AAC evaluation, but isn't the sole evaluator. An SOP must always be a part of this evaluation process since they are the experts in language and communication. An AAC evaluation requires a collaborative approach between the family, staff, and specialists who work with or have knowledge of that adult. Other areas to make sure to consider include vision, hearing, and motor abilities, as well as the environment and potential communication partners. The evaluation also includes trials with the AAC systems, both high and low tech. Communication examined through the lens of the SET framework is especially useful. How the AAC user uses the AAC system is an important piece of successful implementation. Use and access are used interchangeably here. Accessing is how I engage or interact with the AAC system. And when considering that, I have two categories: direct and indirect selection. Direct selection refers to directly accessing or touching the AAC system. Indirect selection includes a secondary or additional tool. If I can't directly touch with my fingers or toes, or even use my eyes, then most likely I'm going to need an indirect selection method, such as a mouth stick or a head pointer or switches. Those would be all indirect selection methods. Eye gaze access is sometimes the best option for persons with severe motor impairments. In this video, we are going to watch two therapists work with a person who has ALS and is using an eye gaze board. They explain the key elements, and I feel like it's an important lesson we could all learn.
We're here this afternoon with Bill to show you some low-tech communication options. Bill is a high-tech user, and he uses an eye gaze communication device to communicate on a daily basis.
The low-tech board is helpful when I need to go to the hospital and they cannot get computer set up with short trips that don't really need to take the computer. Also when computer goes down.
that system doesn't always work. And there's times that you just have to have a low tech, as Bill shared with you, when you go to the hospital, or sometimes when the staff comes in and you just need some quick communication about cares. There's a lot of times that a low tech communication option is just really critical. So we're here this afternoon to show you a little bit about using an E-Tran board. This is an example of the E-Tran board that we have developed, and it has the traditional configuration of the E-Tran letters here. And then we've added a couple of other things. We've added a word bank over here where you can dry erase words on there so that you can use eye gaze to quickly communicate a single word or a single instruction. And we have numbers. And then we've also left a little bit of space that you can use writing to do things like, in this example, we have some codes that we'll explain a little bit later. To review how the E-Tran board works and how you use it for communication, you're going to look at your communication partner through the center of the board. And in the traditional method, it's going to take two different eye gazes to indicate a letter. The first eye gaze is going to indicate which quadrant the letter is on. The second eye gaze is going to be used to indicate the position of the letter. So the M would be in this position, the N, the O, the P, the Q, and the R. So just to show you, we'll have Bill use the board to indicate a letter for us. So Bill has used his first eye gaze. I always really recommend that when you establish this, when you look at the patient, you want to get your eye gaze maintained first. They look at the letter. Bill looked at this quadrant. So now I know that he has selected one of these 6 letters. He looks back at me, and then he'll use the second eye gaze, and he looked up into this corner. That indicates to me that he wants the letter M because the letter M is in this quadrant, the position of this quadrant.
And now we're going to talk about tips to make communication more effective with the low-tech board. First, it's important to establish a yes, no, or maybe with a client. And it's going to be different for different people. Some people can still shake their head. In Bill's case, his yes is to look up and his no is to look down. And if he's I don't know or maybe, he looks to either the right or the left out of his eye. And so if we were unsure of a word he was trying to spell, I might say the word and I would look for his response, yes, no, and maybe I have part of it right, and he gives me a maybe, and we go from there. It's not always smooth using low technology as well as high technology, and so it's important to have a yes, no, maybe response, right, established in the beginning.
And I think one of the big keys to having low tech be successful is to establish a relationship with the patient. This is a really personal kind of communication, using your eyes to communicate. And so the better you know the patient, the more familiar you are with that patient, the more time you spend in this kind of communication, the easier that gets.
I think you also learn the flow, things that they're going to say, the jokes they're going to tell, what they're going to ask for or ask about. The other thing that's helpful for people who are first learning how to use an E-Tran board is to have a pad of paper or a high technology, a boogie board, which is somewhat high. I say a piece of paper on steroids, basically, or a dry erase board. Dry erase boards would work as well, so that you can keep track of what the person's trying to tell you, because you can start spelling a whole paragraph and lose track of what's being said.
The other thing you can do to ease the communication is come up with a coding system. We alluded to that earlier by saying we had indicated some of the codes over here. Oftentimes when you're using the low tech, if it's for communication with nursing staff or if it's for communication with family, you're going to know some of the things that want to be said. Rather than having to spell all those words out, you can come up with a coding system. Our example over here is we've written ML. If Bill needed to say that he'd like his legs moved, rather than have to communicate those words, he can just eye gaze ML and indicate that it's a code, and then we would know what he wants. I usually recommend for patients that you can do a coding system on the board. You can have something on the wall so that, especially for staff who comes in and you want quick and easy communication, they can indicate they'd like to use the code, look at the wall, and they can easily find out what the patient wants to communicate. Oftentimes then we will do a book as well, so that if you're communicating with family members, that's going to be a whole different set of codes, and we can have all kinds of things listed, even by category, so that if the patient would indicate over here, you can put some different categories, family, events, and then you can turn to that page and have codes for all that. So you can make a coding system as easy or as complex as you need.
I hope you found that interesting and educational. I know I came away with several tips, such as always having either low-tech paper and pencil or high-tech boogie board available for writing down the messages as the communication partner when I'm talking to someone using an eye gaze board. On the side of the slide are various resources. I hope you will go and check those out. Partner-assisted scanning is a communication tool that requires a communication partner. It can be implemented in an auditory-only manner or a combination of auditory and visual. Let's watch this video explaining partner-assisted scanning.
Hi there. Today we're going to be talking about partner-assisted scanning, sometimes called PAS for short. Partner-assisted scanning is a way to help our communicators who have a really difficult time expressing themselves. Typically, these are for kids that are using movements for communication and often even movements that are difficult to interpret by the community at large. So there's two types of partner-assisted scanning that we are going to specifically talk about right now. The first one is auditory scanning. That's where our student is listening for their choices. And the second one is visual scanning. And that's when our student is using their eyes and also their ears in order to communicate. Let's start with auditory scanning because it's right up here on my board right now. Auditory scanning is for a child that maybe doesn't have very good vision or they're just not in a position where they can see what it is you're referring to. What you're going to be doing is presenting them choices orally that they need to listen to and indicate to you that that's the one they want. So think about it a little bit like a menu, that you go to a restaurant and there's a menu, but for whatever, you just had eye surgery or you're wearing dark glasses or for whatever reason it is, you can't see the menu. So someone has to tell you the menu. Now, the way to do this to really get buy-in is not to go up to the person at a new restaurant and say, hey, do you want some chicken? Well, you're like, I don't know. Do I want chicken? What type of chicken? What are the other choices? I don't know if I want chicken, right? We don't just go up and say, is this the one you want? We actually have to tell someone kind of like a preview of what their choices are going to be. So we go up to our student and we say, hey, I think you have something to tell me. Here are some categories it might be in. Maybe you want something. Maybe something's wrong. Maybe it's a chat word. Or maybe we should go. Are you ready? I'm going to go through each of those and you tell me when I get to the one that you want to tell me. I want something. So remember what you're going to do is you're going to let me know when I get to the one you want. And then you're going to wait like 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever it takes for that particular student. Because remember, that kiddo has to get the message from your mouth to their brain, swirl around in their brains so they understand what you're saying, and then it has to get from their brain back out through their body before they can tell you that that's the one that they want. Some common ways that kids tell you that's the one they want are pressing a voice output button that says, that's the one I want, smiling, doing something with their head, tensing up their hand, or doing a traditional yes. Those are all ways that you could figure out that that's what they want. If they have a no, even better, because then you don't have to wait as long because they'll immediately tell you yes or no for every choice. But let's just say in our case that we do the I want, we wait a good 10 seconds and the child has not told us anything, no indication of communication. Like, that's okay. Okay, do you want to tell me that something's wrong? And now you wait 5 seconds and you see the child kind of goes, and you point out what you saw and why you're going to honor that. I saw it. You moved your head and your hand. I think you were telling me yes, that something's wrong. Here are some things that it might be. Now you're going to preview again because remember, you're previewing the menu. They can't see it. Something hurts. I'm sad. I'm mad. I'm scared, or something else. Are you ready? I'm going to go through them in order. And this is very important. Make sure you go through them in order. It's like the alphabet. If you start in the middle of the alphabet, people get confused. If you start at letter A, everyone understands what's coming next. So we're going to go through them in order. Does something hurt? Are you feeling sad? Oh, I heard you make a noise. You must be telling me that you're feeling sad. Oh man, I bet you're feeling sad because you missed your mom today. Is that what's going on? Yeah, that's really sad. I understand. Sometimes I miss my mom too. So that's how you would go through the auditory scanning. You would go through, you'd give them a preview, you'd go through each category. When they indicate that that's the category that they want to talk about, you do a preview going down, and then you go through each individual thing. Remember, you're always going to have a something else, or it's not on here, or something different, because very well the place that the thing that the child want isn't to play with a toy, someone, listen to music, or to eat or drink, right? There easily could be something else that we just haven't thought about yet, and so that would all go under the something else. Okay, the second type of partner-assisted scanning that we're going to talk about is visual partner-assisted scanning. And there are many ways to do this as well. I'm just going to give you a preview for one of them. Just like when you're doing auditory partner-assisted scanning, you definitely want to do a preview and tell the student what it is that they're looking at ahead of time. So you say, I really think you have something to tell me. Here are some things that it might be. You might want to tell me that you like that you don't like that you need help, or that you have a feeling. Are you ready to tell me which one it is? Okay, do you want to say, I like that? Now, here's some differences with the one main difference with the visual and the auditory scanning is that in this case, the child can also communicate to you which thing they want by looking intensely at it. And one great way to do visual scanning is to have these four squares like kind of far apart, like on an eye gaze board, so that you can really see where their eyes are looking, because that's a very powerful means of communication for some of our kids that can't control a lot of different parts of their body. So in this case, let's say that we start with the I like that, and the kid is looking very closely at the I like that, and you are interpreting that as communicative. I see that you're telling me I like that. Yeah, I like that too. I wonder if there's some more information we can go through here. Now, on this particular board, there's so many different ones. There's no standard. On this particular one, we have a lot of different choices. I think for the sake of this, I'm only going to go through these four. So our student has indicated, I like that. Now we're going to say, okay, let's tell me more about I like that. Ready? Here are your choices. Yes, that's great, that's funny, and wow. Get ready to tell me which one you want. Yes. That's great. That's funny. Wow. You haven't told me any of these. Is it something else? Oh, it is something else. Okay, let's try some different words. And then if that's the case, we actually have some more words here, and maybe the kiddo wants to say one of those words. And then, of course, maybe they didn't want to say any of those things, and it's like, redo, oops. Unfortunately, there's no backspace here, right? So the child has to listen to you go through all the choices and then indicate something else, something else, something else. And then you're like, oops, I think we had a miscommunication. And then you do have to start over. Some things that are difficult about communication partner scanning is that it is a very lengthy process. It is time intensive, and it requires a lot of attention, both for the communication partner and for the student who's using the communication partner scanning system. But it is one of the most empowering things that student can access. Imagine a kiddo who only receives, who has never been able to tell you anything, all of a sudden having a voice and being able to tell you, I love you, or I'm sad, or I want to go to bed, right? So even though partner-assisted scanning does take a lot of work on the part of the communication partner, which is usually an adult, but it could be a peer or a sibling as well, it is such an empowering way to give a child that otherwise doesn't have a voice, a way to communicate and express themselves.
Vocabulary selection for augmentative communication systems is one of the most critical components. Your AAC system will only be as effective as the vocabulary you have available. And with adults, because they need to have buy-in and motivation to use it, including them in the selection of vocabulary is critical to the success. The type of symbols and technology all factor in to how the AAC system will work, the type of communication exchanges you anticipate taking place, and the level of cognitive ability of the adult, as well as the communication partners, all impact the usefulness of the AAC system. If the communication system is an alphabet-only board and either the communication partner or the adult AAC user have trouble spelling, then the system fails. If it has lots of foods I like, but now I'm G-tube fed or on a restricted diet, then lots of its vocabulary is not motivating or inapplicable. Information from Ash's Journal of Speech and Language encourages identifying vocabulary that is generic enough to be flexible. This is usually core vocabulary and very appropriate to a variety of settings, but also have some vocabulary specific to the adult. For instance, family members or particularly functional items, such as maybe glasses or hearing aids or suction tubes, so that it is motivating. Size matters. Vision as well as motor is impacted by how large the letters or symbols are or how far spaced they are. Historically, most of the words and pictures or symbols selected for an AAC system have related primarily to the user's basic needs. In certain settings, it is based on the questions most frequently asked of the patient. Think the pain scale for the hospital or skilled nursing facility. These are important to that environment, but don't diminish communication opportunities by limiting conversation in a home environment. The adult may lose hope and interest in communicating very quickly and withdraw if they don't have access to vocabulary that helps them maintain their sense of self-worth and value. I think we need to focus on ways to increase communication and engagement in the adult population so they maintain quality of life as long as possible, especially with friends and family.
When thinking about vocabulary selection, we must also consider for what activities the communicator will be using the system. Across the next several slides, we will discuss why AAC use is important and how it can be used in various ADLs or activities of daily living. Why is considering AAC use in the adult population important? When we think about the percentage of adults in long-term care or that reside in assisted or skilled nursing facilities, the numbers speak for themselves. How would these adults otherwise communicate without AAC? Would all of their opinions, thoughts, requests, and/or questions go unsaid? AAC provides an avenue to assist these individuals with what Anne mentioned previously is one of their basic human rights. 85% of residents on long-term care are functionally independent and require assistance while completing ADLs. So likely they have quite a bit to say related to how that assistance is provided. 25% of residents live with dual sensory loss. Being able to provide hearing and vision assistance is huge in improving quality of life. I hate the buildup of ear pressure after a long flight and how it diminishes my hearing until my ears finally pop. What a relief. And unfortunately, I've recently started to realize I may need bifocals, as it is super frustrating not being able to see with what used to be quote unquote regular glasses. 90% of residents live with some form of cognitive impairment. Cognitive impairment varies greatly from person to person, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. However, tools do exist to help these individuals understand and express themselves no matter the severity of their impairment. 2 out of 3 residents live with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Again, no cookie-cutter solution, but there are quite a variety of communication and AT options available that can be adapted to meet the unique needs of each individual. Many residents experience communication difficulties associated with chronic conditions such as sensory loss, dementia, stroke, and even cultural or language mismatches. With AAC, we have the opportunity to provide communication options to a variety of individuals with various diagnoses of various ages and various cultural and ethnic backgrounds. That's the beauty of AAC. It's customizable. And to really hit home the reason why, without AAC, caregivers and loved ones are presented with barriers and challenges that limit communication opportunities and weaken relationships. That alone should increase the value of AAC exponentially. AAC provides us with a solution to those challenges and a hammer with which to break down those barriers, which in turn helps us to improve relationships and the quality of life for all communication partners. My mother-in-law was recently diagnosed with bulbar onset ALS this past May. In dealing with her new diagnosis, as a speech pathologist, I have quite a bit of knowledge about what that process looks like and what to expect. But what I didn't think of was how my husband would process it and the challenges he would face. Hearing Lori's speech quality deteriorate and the challenges that my husband would deal with in his communication with her, I have to say is one of the hardest things I've experienced yet. So yes, it's all in the numbers. We're able to meet the unique and complex communication needs of these individuals through the power of AAC. When we think about our day, we can typically categorize what we do throughout our day into different types of activities or events. We collectively refer to these activities as ADLs or IADLs for short. An ADL, or activity of daily living, is a term used to describe the fundamental skills necessary to independently care for oneself, such as grooming, dressing, toileting, eating, and mobility. It is most commonly used when caring for or working with the adult and geriatric populations. An ADL can simply be described as the basic activities of our day, or what we spend our day doing. These activities are necessary for survival. Think of the things that you must do in order to live, not the things you want to do. IADLs, or instrumental activities of daily living, are tasks that require more complex thinking and organizational skills. IADLs often require outside assistance and are often the first activities to be handed over to family or caregivers when the tasks become too difficult to manage independently. IADLs are complex activities necessary for living independently, but not necessary for survival. Some common IADLs are transportation, shopping, finances, telephone and mail correspondence, medication management, cooking, and home maintenance. These activities are helpful to enhancing our lives, but not required. We will get back to the acronyms later, but for now, we're going to move on to some different types of communicative interactions to help you understand what we are trying to do and why it's important. Who knew that there are different types of communicative interactions? Who thought communication was just communication? Talking is talking, right? The simple answer is yes. But what is the reason for talking? When we engage in communication, there is always a purpose behind each interaction. It may be to express something, share something, build a relationship, or simply socialize. Identifying a specific type of interaction or the purpose behind that interaction helps us as caregivers and loved ones assist our communication partner with the same goal or type of interaction in mind. Think about football. I don't know how many of you are football fans, but I love SEC football. Being from the South, I'm a huge University of Georgia fan. Go Dogs! And no judgment, but also a loyal Minnesota Vikings fan. So think of what football would be like if there was no play call. What if the team just lined up, the quarterback snapped the ball, and voila! What happens next? I would imagine confusion and chaos. How would each player know how to support the others? They wouldn't, right? Exactly. The play call is vital. The quarterback must call a play for the team to be on the same page. Communication, whether verbal or nonverbal, one mode or multimodal, is just like that. Each person on the communication team must work together to provide the best chance of success. Most often we think of communication as just expressing things. I want this, I need this, I hate that. But what about sharing? I had a good day today. Or connecting. I really like when you visit on the weekends. That's when I feel the most alone. Relationship building is often overlooked as a type of communication interaction, but interestingly, is also perceived as a top priority. And let's not forget one of my favorites, a nod to my Southern roots, social etiquette. Let's use those well-bred manners or let that personality shine. Since you now know the various types of communicative interactions and the difference between ADLs and IADLs, why is it important that we talk during these activities? Why is communication important in anything? Think about communicating in general. How is it helpful? Communication helps to avoid unnecessary conflict through clarification of the intended message, problem-solve conflict solutions, increase knowledge and decrease wasted time through asking clarifying questions, build connections and relationships through expression of common interest, likes and dislikes, just to name a few. Communication in ADLs and IADLs is important for exactly the same reasons. We want to be on the same page with our communication partners so we can truly assist them and not create conflict unintentionally. It helps us learn their likes and dislikes, saving time, building trust and rapport, all while increasing our knowledge of them and their personal preferences. Think of the difference in independent communication versus assisting someone with communication. In independent communication, the communicator knows what they want to say and says it. This applies for all communication modalities, verbal, nonverbal, written, or gestural. When caregivers assist with communication, they must consider the uniqueness of each person. Everyone is different. If not, the world would be a very boring place. That means that we can say, with a high amount of confidence, that no two people have the same morning routine, same priorities, or same level of patience. What is someone's morning routine? How do they sequence those events? Do they shower and then brush their teeth, or brush their teeth and then shower? One of the biggest reasons to communicate during ADLs and IADLs is to individualize that event or interaction. Everyone is different, so we must consider the personal preferences when assisting those with complex communication needs. Having complex communication needs doesn't take away an individual's ability to express their choices or make decisions on the events of their day. As caregivers, our job is to assist them in communicating those preferences to ensure they are happy with the how and when of those ADLs and IADLs. What happens when our communication message is misunderstood, misinterpreted, or you feel unprepared for a task? Think about the questions on this slide. Can you relate to any of these questions? Has any of this happened to you in your daily life or interactions with those that you care for or work with? Thinking about the answers to those questions on the previous slide, those dilemmas may then lead to undesired effects. You may have thought about some of the following feelings in thinking about your answers: frustration, disappointment, annoyance, not feeling good enough or a false sense of self-worth, lackluster effort, what's the point? I can't do it anymore. You may abandon future communicative attempts. You may feel ill-equipped, or you may feel isolated. Good news, there is a solution. Can you think of that solution? Yes, increase communication access. Understand the importance of the why, identification and implementation of AAC systems, increase education, and why you are listening to this training. So back to those acronyms. We're now going to deep dive into some specific ADLs and IADLs and identify communication opportunities during specific activity completion of each. One of the most frequent ADLs is eating, as it occurs at least 3 times a day for most people, but if you're a snacker or fourth meal type of person, sometimes more. When we think of eating, especially dining out, what are some things we should consider for those with complex communication needs? When reading a menu, are the specials listed or verbally presented by the server? Can one remember those specials should they choose to order them or express a need to have them in written form? One needs to be able to communicate food allergies, dietary restrictions, or how they would like their food prepared. Personally, I like my steak burnt. Not really, but a charred outside and no pink is fine for me. But I know for a fact that for most people, that would not be appetizing, especially for what we must pay for food these days. One should be able to communicate if their food came out cold or is not prepared the way it was ordered, or if more refills or another serving are requested. But the most important thing to communicate when eating is what the communicator would like to order, not what another thinks they want. This is a common pitfall when assisting those with communication needs. The communication partner may choose or anticipate what a communicator thinks instead of giving the person the time to say it. This, in turn, takes away the individuality of the communicator and negates their needs or wants. Waiting or pausing is a must in communicating, whether you pause or turn take with a verbal communicator or pause and wait for an AAC user to formulate and say their message. Make time for the pause. Something else to keep in mind. Social events are often centered around food, so be sure to consider the social aspect of eating and the variety of communication opportunities present related to that social event. Attention should also be given to the event type, location, and people present. Is this a family event or corporate event? Is one at home or at an event venue? Is the crowd familiar to the communicator, or are they a guest or date? Is one on a romantic date or out with a group of friends? Consideration should also be given to volume. If at home, this would likely not be a problem, but consider the difference in being at a busy restaurant or loud bar where music or conversation may impact the communicator's message. All of these factors affect the what and how of one's communication when eating. Some of us love it and some of us hate it. School and work. The why with this ADL, as with most ADLs, is often related to the motivation of the communicator. Does one need something? Do they know where or how to obtain it? Are they giving directions to another in order to complete a task? How do they present that information to an individual versus an audience? Do they have the ability for on-the-spot or quick clarification of information? How does one get attention, or are they able to yell across a room? How does one communicate the need for assistance in completing unfamiliar forms or organizing and delegating tasks for a project? When participating in a job interview, consider both the perspective of the interviewee and the interviewer. Consider reciprocal conversation. When in class or in a meeting, being able to respond to questions in a large group setting or give a presentation. Again, consider the volume and the quality of the information being communicated. Communicating during school and work is often unpredictable as the day is often controlled by others. Usually we don't go to work or school because we have to, we go to work or school because we need to. One must be equipped with the communication tools to be able to adapt to the ever-changing needs that can accompany this ADL. The reason for this training, and by far the most frequently used ADL, functional communication. All the things one could possibly think to communicate, and then some. Limitless options and varieties, the communication smorgasbord. The information we must communicate related to hygiene, food and drink, this can be related to eating and dining, but can also be independent of that. Think of what or when one last ate, or feelings of hunger or thirst. Someone's daily routine, and overall health and wellness. My favorite part of communication, adding in that spark of personality. What one should be able to communicate related to their unique feelings, ideas, and imagination. All the things that make them who they are. This type of communication is specifically tailored and unique to an individual. Oftentimes, functional communication may be in the form of a pre-programmed message, as that message may be something an individual says multiple times a day. For example, I tend to say, "Yikes," when things don't go as planned. And to be honest, that happens quite often. I'm pretty sure that exclamatory phrase is unique to me. One thing to remember about functional communication is that it's different for everyone. If someone has something to say, that information is functional to them and they should have a way to say it. Functional communication encompasses everything and anything. This IADL is one of the most important as it is vital to keeping us healthy and well. Working in healthcare and primarily with adults, I can't say that I've never met someone that doesn't want input into their medical choices, but for the most part, I'd say the average person usually has quite a few opinions, questions, or concerns regarding their health. I know I do. I always joke that I'm a terrible patient, but I think that's true for most people that work in healthcare. The need to ask questions related to medications, not just how much or how often, but what happens if I forgot a dose? What do I do? Using a telephone to call a nurse hotline or make and cancel appointments, arranging transportation to appointments, or simply being able to communicate symptoms or reactions when one is not feeling well. Online chat is often an option to consider depending on the urgency of the question or concern. This information can often be life or death, so one must be able to effectively and efficiently communicate the necessary details, whether to a physician, family member, or care provider. Who doesn't like to have fun? This IADL can bring the most excitement and happiness to one's life, which makes it even more important to consider the multitude of communication opportunities present. So many options for fun. Buying tickets. The great thing about most events nowadays is the ability to buy tickets online, but consider if that's not an option. Ordering food from the concession stand, communicating problems, requests, or questions. When bowling, my ball is stuck in the gutter, please help. Or every child's favorite, where's the restroom? Social and leisure activities are accompanied by unique circumstances, crowds, noises, distractions, both visually and auditorily, which make communicating in these locations more difficult for even a verbal communicator. How does one gain attention from a friend that is looking for them but can't find them? Can they yell across a crowded space? My best friend, who is also an SLP, shared a story with me last summer about an individual with a wheelchair-mounted AAC system at Disneyland. He and his friend were moving from one area of the park to another. The friend was walking ahead of him and quickly turned around to say something and then disappeared into a restroom several hundred feet away. My friend said the man looked confused and stranded as he wasn't sure what was going on. He wasn't expecting that communication, so didn't have a response ready to ask where his friend was or when he'd be back. And if he had had a response, would the friend have even heard him? My friend said it made her very uncomfortable to watch, knowing the individual was unable to participate in a communication interaction in a successful way. Following that communicator with the wheelchair-mounted system, consider the portability of the AAC system, and if one system will work for all of life's activities. One may need options based on their interest. A laminated waterproof flipbook on a lanyard for a water park day or day on the lake versus an eye gaze board for use at home for game night with friends. Everyone's idea of fun is different, so the communication opportunities surrounding this IADL should be tailored to meet the unique needs of each individual. We mostly save the best for last. Shopping, definitely. Finances, Talking about the not so fun things first. Going to a bank, getting a mortgage, disputing a credit card transaction, or paying bills. How would one communicate during those interactions, especially when emotions may be involved? Think about when you're upset. Think about how you're trying to communicate, especially when emotions are driving that communication. Are we able to effectively express that message? We're all adults, and we know that things can often become heated when it comes to money. My best friend, yes, the same one, works with the school district's adult transition program. This program assists adults ages 18 to 22 with a variety of disabilities and diagnoses to include visual impairments, complex medical needs, AAC users, as well as deaf and hard of hearing. A part of that program involves teaching the individuals to use public transportation and buy groceries and basic necessities. They are also taken on fun outings such as bowling, movies, and out to eat. These individuals must be able to ask where things are located, if they have more of an item, or a specific size. Additional things to consider with shopping are the fit of an item and being able to describe what is needed related to comfort and function, as well as locating a rare item or material that the majority of consumers may not purchase. When it comes to transportation, you may think you're getting on a plane or in a car and you won't be talking that much, but think about what happens when you're at an airport, taking a ferry, traveling to a new place. Has anyone ever been to Chicago O'Hare? I don't even know if anyone works there. So how do we communicate needing assistance if no one is around to help us? Communication hurdles may arise related to the finer details of a trip or being able to express exactly where you want to go, or if you're in a hurry. How do we communicate the nuances related to these activities? To recap the variety of communication opportunities present when completing ADLs and IADLs, each activity will be different based on the unique characteristics of each communication partner. Tailor your communication assistance to each individual, just like you tailor your interactions with verbal communicators. Keep this goal in mind. Individuals with complex communication needs must be able to participate in all of life's activities, regardless of their communication abilities. With that focus, you will always be successful.
Back to that line in the ADA that says the ADA requires public and private entities to provide auxiliary aids and services. What does that mean? This list has some overlap with the augmentative communication mentioned earlier, but with a focus on what would be considered a reasonable accommodation that a business might be expected to make available to their customers. You may notice that the list does not include hearing aids or glasses. Those personal items were excluded from coverage under the ADA. A high-tech communication device would probably also not be covered under the ADA due to the programming for a specific user. And this creates a conundrum. How do we provide effective communication when funding is not available for the devices that would provide communication access for an individual? I'm going to focus on the things that clearly fall under the term auxiliary aids and services that can help us get closer to effective communication when people don't have access to hearing aids or glasses or high-tech communication devices. These are some of the auxiliary aids and services that would be considered reasonable accommodations to help bridge the communication gaps. Sign language interpreters, either in person or video remote interpreting, captioning, assistive listening devices or systems, accessible telecommunications, notes and written materials, plain language, voice amplifiers or PA systems, large print documents, magnifiers, audio recordings, braille, accessible websites, audio description, and of course, extra time and patience. Let's start with a simple one. Clear masks are one of those tools that were incredibly underutilized during COVID. They could not only allow someone to see the visual support from lip reading, but can also allow someone to see facial expressions, which is a significant component of conveying meaning. And for someone who's frightened or has anxiety, being able to see a smile can make a world of difference. While businesses and service providers are not required to provide hearing aids, assistive listening devices are considered a reasonable accommodation for someone with hearing loss. That may mean a PA system for making announcements or to include people with hearing loss in group activities, or it might mean personal sound amplifiers. Some look like earbuds or hearing aids. Others look like a small microphone with headphones attached. They range from amplifiers that are designed to help bird watchers and hunters hear critters in the woods, to devices marketed to people with hearing loss, to apps on a smartphone that allow you to use the phone's microphone to pick up sound and transmit it to your headphones or compatible hearing aids. Instructions on how to turn on this feature on your smartphone are included in the handouts. Last weekend, at my high school reunion, I took a voice amplifier, like the ones that Zumba teachers use, with a wireless mic and a small speaker, for one of my classmates who has advanced MS. In the crowd at the event, my ability to understand what he was saying was a lot like that colored picture I showed a minute ago. With the microphone on him and the speaker held to my ear, I could actually carry on a full conversation with him, even in the din of the reunion, and he proceeded to use it all evening. Another accommodation that many people with hearing loss who read well depend on is captioning. For watching TV, phone and video calls, or even in-person interactions. This may be using a CART transcriptionist for situations where accuracy is critical or where there's a lot of background noise, or it may be done using AI options that can be turned on in any smart device, and it just depends on the situation which is needed. I was recently in a meeting with a group of hospital chaplains, and one of them commented about an interaction with a patient who couldn't hear anything she said. I asked the whole group to pull out their phones and turn on live captions if they had an iPhone, or Google Live Transcribe on Androids. Every time I've encountered the lead chaplain since then, she's been using live captions herself because of her own hearing loss. And the person I mentioned earlier now uses live captions on an iPad to read what staff in the nursing home are saying. Anytime someone enters the room, a touch of the button turns on immediate access to whatever they say. My person also is now in daily contact with family on the East Coast through Facebook and Messenger. They use a $17 text-based communication app that saves phrases that can be activated and spoken aloud with a single touch, and an on-screen keyboard app called Keeble that has large print letters and large print word prediction bar, which makes typing much faster. They have access to games and TV with captions that are close enough to read and big enough. And we even found a way to do screen sharing so that family members can see and hear what is being typed on the communication app during video calls, and the person then reads their responses using live captions. When we first met, this person's access to the world basically ended at the foot of their bed. A tablet and less than $50 in communication apps has reconnected them with the world outside the nursing home and has dramatically improved their quality of life. For the signing deaf community, video phones, video relay, and video remote interpreting have opened up access to the world. Video phones allow them to sign to each other on a video call. Video relay services allow them to make a telephone call to anyone by signing to a qualified interpreter who voices what they're signing to the person they're calling. The relay service is provided by the accessibility tax on our phone bills to make telecommunications accessible to everyone. Video remote interpreting is an online option for providing professional interpreting when a live interpreter isn't feasible or immediately available. Doctor's appointments, care meetings, activities, church services, and more are all situations where an interpreter may be the accommodation needed to give a culturally deaf person full access. However, for these services that are not telephone-based, a business would need to set up a contract with a remote video interpreting service and pay for those interpreting situations that are face-to-face rather than telephone calls. Because telephones are a lifeline to maintaining independence for so many people, I wanted to mention some of the accessibility options for telephone communication. Too often I hear the phrase, "they can't use their phone anymore." Well, maybe they can. At the Idaho Assistive Technology Project, we have lending libraries of equipment, including telephone options, that include features such as amplification, big buttons for low vision or dexterity issues, phones that caption telephone calls, simplified interfaces such as pre-programmed picture buttons, and talking or braille interfaces for people who are blind or even deafblind. Many of these features are also readily available on the smartphones in your pockets. If you know someone who struggles to use their phone due to disability, give us a call. Another telecommunications service provided by the FCC for people whose speech might not be clearly understood is called speech-to-speech relay, a live communication assistant with Special training to understand non-standard speech facilitates the conversation by clarifying what is being said or supporting the AAC-generated conversations. Some high-tech AAC speech-generating devices also include the option of making phone calls directly using the device. When COVID hit, I was involved in several projects involving reducing social isolation, health equity, and telehealth in long-term care. Suddenly, tablets were made available to every skilled nursing facility in the state. But the tablets didn't arrive with accessibility manuals or headphones for noise cancellation and amplification. Captioning for video calling platforms was still in its infancy, and unless you were in ICU, the tablets didn't come on mounting systems or rolling carts, and they didn't have wipeable, durable, adjustable cases, and the mounting wasn't part of the package. But now there are telehealth resource centers who provide technical assistance to help providers assure that people using telehealth services can hear and be understood, see and be seen, hold and interact with the telecommunication device, and otherwise be fully able to interact with telehealth care providers at a distance. In addition to the direct and indirect access methods for communication systems that were discussed earlier, there are also a range of assistive technology options to give someone with physical limitations access to communication devices. My first introduction to this realm was years before I started working at the AT Project, when I was introduced to someone who had a high-level spinal cord injury and was on a ventilator. He couldn't be heard over the oxygen machine, and his only communication beyond someone reading his lips was through a computer that he controlled with a chin mouse, which had broken. In the Idaho Assistive Technology Resource Center, we have equipment lending libraries around the state that include options for controlling a computer, smart device, or a communication system with your eyes, head, chin, mouth, feet, or voice, anything that works. We have switches that can be activated by any body part that someone can control, and mouse options that reduce the impact of tremors. We also have a variety of mounts, so communication devices can be attached to a wheelchair or a bedside table, so they're handy and within reach at all times. The glass head mouse in the upper picture on this slide are worn like a pair of glasses, and as your head moves, a cursor moves on the screen, and the person has a bite switch that allows them to have complete mouse control over a computer, even if they have no arm movement or arms at all. The lower picture is Todd Stablefelt, affectionately known as the Quad Father. He's paralyzed from the neck down and controls his phone, computer, power wheelchair, and all of his smart home devices, including the door opener, with the switch array that he controls with his chin and his tongue. There are also free apps currently available, such as one called Jabberwocky, that can give someone head control access to any Android or iOS device. And Apple has just announced that later this year they will be releasing eye tracking and vocal shortcuts, which will allow users to perform tasks by moving just their eyes or by making a custom sound.
For our last section, we are going to focus on the things communication partners can do. with the tools we've already talked about to support adults with communication disabilities or needs. Communication partners make a difference daily, impacting motivation and engagement of adults with complex communication disorders, just by their speech and behavior. Just like with pediatric patients, sometimes it is better to change your behavior as the communication partner, and that will impact the adult behavior or the person with complex communication needs. So who is a communication partner? Basically, everyone is a potential communication partner and should recognize their role and responsibilities. It doesn't matter whether you're the janitor in a facility or the workman, or you're the speech language pathologist or the director of the facility. You all have a role to play in engaging the adult with complex communication needs. Remember earlier how I told you adults with communication disorders have poorer healthcare options. That is largely because of how staff, providers, therapists, general staff, engage with those adults, often negatively impacting the health of those that have trouble communicating, largely because they are inflexible or ignorant of the things that they could be doing or tools they could use to improve the communication exchange, just by a few added tools or tweaks to their behavior. Just because a person has ALS or even aphasia or a developmental disorder and has difficulty speaking clearly or communicating quickly, we need to treat them first and foremost as a person. That sounds simple and obvious, but it is the number one issue facing adults. People often change their behavior when communicating with someone who has a hard time speaking or hearing. Some comments recorded on the Boston Children's website under the tips from people with ALS include, "People talk to my husband about me and refer to me as her when I am right there." Or, "If people guess and predict for me, I still complete the message, even if they got it right. It is the only way to make it clear that I want to stay in charge of me." The change in communication skills that comes with a disability, especially a sudden onset such as an accident or neurological degenerative disease, also impacts the communication partners. The rhythm of communication is changed. Whether the person with communication impairment is using natural speech, quick access tools, or a sophisticated high-tech system. In such situations, communication partners often try to reduce the burden or lessen possible frustration by interpreting, guessing, or in some instances, simply speaking over the person. When doing so, they diminish the person, often unconsciously or unintentionally. It's important as communication partners to remember that the person before them is still a person and often understands more than they can express. Communication partners, especially spouses and family members, but also those who interact daily with adults as professionals, often impact whether the AAC system gets used. As a group, communication partners can often identify issues and challenges for this population. They often have several challenges already, and then adding on a change in communicating as a result of a trauma or sudden onset such as ALS can be overwhelming. If you are new to AAC systems, you need to learn about them and then practice with them. Your attitude toward the AAC system will certainly impact its use. Just like any new tool, any new language or new habit we want to adopt, we have to do it daily. We have to have it readily available. Caroline Musselwhite talks about 2-second reach. Otherwise, we'll go on without it. Make conscious habits to add it into the communication dialogue. If we don't practice or use the system daily in functional, ongoing conversations, it will be abandoned. Small steps daily make a difference. In September 2005, an article published in the AAC Journal talked about communication and active participation, or caregiver issues. There are numerous barriers to this transition of use of AAC systems, not least among them that there is a stigma attached to any of these tools. Older persons often tend to go it alone and may not seek assistance even if the family members want it. The adult might not want to see themselves as old or impaired and therefore reject the equipment. The partners might be struggling with their new roles or put off by their family members' communication differences. I have seen too often my own siblings annoyed with my father's or mother's difficulty hearing anything and just reluctant to pick up the whiteboard to print out a message, or my mother's repeating the same message or topic of conversation we just had. As professionals, we sometimes face barriers of time and expertise. Finding the right AAC system is time-consuming, and we might want high-tech when the adult only wants low-tech. Or we know he soon won't be able to touch the communication board, but is struggling to use the eye gaze board. So, what can we do to overcome the barriers? Some successes reported in this article was helping the adult tell their story. From disability and communicative changes, we can help them transition through their grief. Another suggestion was to develop social networks for our adult clients, changing their perspective from AAC to AAS, or Augmentative and Alternative Socialization. We might also train family members more, especially intergenerational motivations for using technology, such as webcams or use of Alexa might be used to help us integrate that AAC system. I'm sure some of you are wondering if it's too late to start, that adult you might have in your head would benefit or not. The answer is yes, they would. Start with something simple and build on it. Take the communication board and start modeling today. This is one of my favorite quotes by David McNaughton, an SLP and professor at Penn State University. He was a noted researcher and publisher in the AAC. Please read it. Many of us might take communication for granted. When we're thinking of modeling and core vocabulary, it's important to think about how we can change our behavior to promote communication from the AAC user. We all know certain people that can interact better than others. Here are some tips for how we can change our own behavior to foster communication. First, we can create a positive communication environment where all communication is encouraged and accepted. We need to make sure that we respond to all communication attempts. It's okay for adults to explore their vocabulary on their system. We've also found that adults whose cognitive abilities are intact are reticent to use the system because they don't want to fail or they sound different. If we use it, they will more readily use it. Communication partners should comment and narrate about activities in the environment using AAC. This encourages and demonstrates to the AAC user how to use the system. When using questions, try to use open-ended WH questions over yes/no questions. Stay positive, but not condescending. Always be at eye level and make sure the AAC system is facing the AAC user, and provide adequate wait time to allow the adult time to respond. Keep in mind when training communication partners that you don't want to change too much too quickly. Knowing some of the pitfalls may help avoid falling into them. Don't just nod at me. Say, I don't understand, or repeat that again. It's okay for communication partners to say, I don't understand you. Let's use the AAC system, please. It helps to practice, of course, so that we aren't in breakdown mode when we finally get out the AAC system. It helps if everyone can speak AAC and maybe even support it with ease. Communication partners often solve the adult's communication breakdown instead of waiting and helping the adult figure out how to repair the breakdown through communication. Instead of solving the problem, a good strategy is to model the intended message and help the adult work through it. So how do you start? By being here today, you are learning about AAC and how that will positively impact communication interactions. You would identify a few tools to start with, such as a communication board or an alphabet board. You might borrow the equipment from the Idaho Assistive Technology Project Lending Library, or reach out under resources to some of us to get help in finding equipment. Training your AAC user as well as the team involved will get you on the course for improving the quality of life of the adults with communication disorders.
When questions come up about technology to help people with disabilities, give us a call at the Idaho Assistive Technology Project. We're a federally funded statewide program that provides information and referral, training, and technical assistance. We have resource centers around the state where people can come for demonstrations of equipment from our library and borrow devices for trial. We contract with schools, employers, and other organizations to provide assistive technology consultations, and we also coordinate a low-interest financial loan program to help people purchase assistive technology that isn't covered by insurance. That loan program has helped people, many of whom wouldn't qualify for an unsecured loan, to purchase everything from hearing aids to stair lifts to wheelchair-accessible vans. For more information, give us a call at 1-800-432-8324 or check our website, www.idahoat.org. And this QR code will take you to a Padlet, which is kind of like a Pinterest board, that includes all the links to all the resources mentioned in this presentation. It's available at bit.ly/COMM4LIFEPADLET.